Good morning, participants. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Course Pack Ganern. Where to start, how to do it, what to write, round 2. We are recording this webinar and this will be made available for your perusal soon, including the materials. While we're here in Zoom, we'd also like to greet those watching via YouTube. Good morning and welcome to the webinar. Kindly use the chat box only for greetings, comments, and participation in the interactive questions. For YouTube attendees, you may use the chat box to post your greetings, comments, and questions. Ms. Law from ILC Diliman will be monitoring your YouTube chat box so she can relay the questions here as well as your messages through Zoom. We'll also have specific Q&A parts in between the webinar. Let's begin Course Pack Ganern with today's speaker, an associate professor from the College of Education in UP Diliman, who also has experience teaching in UP Open University. Please help me welcome Portia Padilla. Ma'am Portia. Ma'am, naka-mute po yata kayo. There you go. And ma'am, Portia, naka-mute po tayo.
Hey,
Ayan, okay. Sige ma'am.
can they see my slides, Marks?
Yes, kita po.
Okay.
Kitang-kita. Okay.
Okay. Good morning po. I'm Portia. I cannot afford the car, so I have to settle for the name. Okay, thank you for making time to be in today's webinar on Course Pack Ganern, where to start, how to do it, and what to write. At least based on my personal experience, which may be different from yours. Still, I hope you would be able to pick up a thing or two from today's webinar. Again, thank you for coming because it's so early in the morning. I know it's quite a struggle waking up this early, especially if you've been spending many long nights working on the horse park. Okay, I'm sure you miss teaching face-to-face classes. So hopefully this particular webinar will help you try to transition from face-to-face delivery to remote delivery. But aside from teaching face-to-face classes, you must be missing other less academic and non-academic things as well, like maybe some social events. So let's focus on a particular social event, and that is weddings. Do you miss attending weddings? If you do, give me a thumbs up in the chat box. Okay. If you miss attending weddings, give me a thumbs up in the chat box. Okay. So maybe some of you miss it, some of you don't. Well, anyway, whether you miss attending weddings or not, whether you like weddings or not, let me tell you about my recent wedding. Okay, I'd like to tell you about my recent wedding. Now, what was your first reaction when you heard me say that? Were you excited? Were you surprised? Or maybe like some of my colleagues at the College of Education last week, maybe some of them got a little bit shocked. Anyway, I just tried to give you a pak ganern moment, which could literally mean, boom, look at that. It could be an expression of excitement, happiness, amazement, or even shock. Now, let's get a little more serious. Tell me honestly, when you first learned that you're going to make a course pack for each course that you're going to teach this coming semester, what was your first reaction? Were you excited? If you were excited upon the prospect of writing a course pack for each course, give me a thumbs up sign or send me a yes in the chat box. Come on. Were you excited? Are you still there? Why isn't anyone sending me a thumbs up or saying a yes? Oh, maybe you weren't excited. Were you shocked? If you were shocked upon learning of course pack preparation, give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat box. Okay. Yes. So now we okay now okay now I feel slightly better because I see some answers coming. You're still there. I thought you weren't there anymore when you didn't say yes to the to the excitement part. Okay. Maybe some of you did not feel excited. Maybe some were not shocked. Maybe some were confused. Some of you may have even been worried. Some even probably asked, what in the world is a course pack anyway? I mean, what in the universe rather is a course pack? Okay. So let's move on. Maybe you'd like to know how I went about doing it. You probably had your reason for that reaction in much the same way that I had my own reason for asking you about a wedding. Okay. And I asked you about weddings because my course pack preparation is something like a wedding. Well, sort of, I think. Because you see, the truth is, I've never been married, but I have finished a course pack. That's one out of two, and that's not so bad, huh? Maybe some of you are thinking or even saying, "Oh, buti pa siya." I don't know what you mean by that. Buti pa ako na hindi pa kinakasal o buti pa ako na may course pack na. But let's not get into that. Okay. As you have in the slides, no, at least the PDF version that you were sent yesterday, you were sent a copy of the content slides of my presentation yesterday. If you pre-registered, you were sent that. You were also sent a copy of my whole course pack for EDR 221, except for the learning resources. They were sent to you in Word format, so you can edit them very easily to suit your own purposes. So you may use them, you may adopt them, just make the um, proper attribution when and where necessary. They are in Word file, I mean Word format. The all the guides, no, all sorts of guides, everything in my course pack except for the learning resources, plus a PDF version of the content slides of my presentation. You were sent all those yesterday. Okay, so there's an old English verse, old English rhyme that captures a superstition in the Victorian period, where it's believed, when and where it was believed that if a bride wears something old, new, borrowed, blue, and a sixpence in her shoe, then those are symbols for very good things in the upcoming life with her husband. And you have all of them there in the slide. And my course pack preparation had all of those somethings there. Okay, at least sort of. Before you start thinking that I am here to convince you to attend weddings, even during a pandemic, or maybe to convince you to have your own wedding, let me be explicit about the objectives of today's webinar. And those are the two objectives. So gaining insight and consequently, hopefully, taking relevant steps in relation to those insights. Okay, now I'd like you to keep calm and breathe and keep calm and try to hear me out as I share with you how I went about it. So, first things first, how did I go about doing it? I attended the online course for all UP faculty members on course redesign for remote learning. And in that course, we went through six different steps in course redesign, which eventually led to the preparation of our respective course packs. Now, if you don't have, if you have time and energy, I highly encourage you to attend that course. You can simply self-enroll. The course is still up and running in your respective learning management systems. So those six steps are actually found in in the course site and in the course itself. And for each particular step, we were guided through a study guide and some very useful and practical learning resources. So a lot of the things that I will be talking to you about today, a lot of the things I'll be sharing with you had this particular context and had this particular starting board, so to speak. Okay, I tried as much as I can to follow the principles, the guidelines, and the recommendations in this particular course. I may not be very successful at it, but at least I hope to get a flat one for the effort. But anyway, since we're all busy making our own course packs, if you can't have the time for that, I hope that you try to visit the system site for the system site on and for remote learning. Those steps and the guidelines have been summarized there and in a very easy to follow and easy to find and easy to follow manner. Okay, so those who asked in the registration what steps I went through, these were the steps I went through. I did not invent them. I simply tried as much as I could to follow what I learned in the course redesign for remote learning course. And those who asked what and are still asking what the course pack is, well, as per what the as per that course, this is a course pack checklist, and it's a slightly expanded version. Actually, it's an explanation of the different parts of a course pack that were simply listed in one of the memos of VPA and VPAA Cynthia Bautista. So you need the learning resources, the readings and other content resources in the course pack. We also need a study guide, and ideally one study guide per week. And if you checked my study guides, for all the 14 weeks, they follow this particular format. I did not invent that. I tried to follow or maybe tweak a little bit the template and the steps of for a study guide. And then I also have the activity guides. And in my case, I considered writing an activity guide for the discussion forum. So I reserved all activities that could be done within the context of a week. Like if this were face to face within the context of a 3-hour graduate class in the study guides, the ones here. Okay. So all outputs, and I was referring to quote unquote outputs I was referring to in my study guides had something to do with things that could be done within the context of that time frame. So think of it as those things the students can do in class. So those are all the things there in the study guide. So on a weekly basis, I wrote that. And the activity guide, it's beyond individual reading, and in my case, also beyond one particular week. So because I would like the students to participate, to discuss with each other and with me across the entire semester, so I prepared an activity guide for that. I call it the class participation guide. You also have it in that among those files that were sent to you. And then for the major requirements, we are requested to make assignment guides, which detail the procedure of go on how to go about the task and naturally how the students will be graded. And probably the most important thing for students to consider is the date of submission. I've realized that that is always what they're asking for. I mean, face to face. So forget everything else, but do not forget to tell the students when it is due. Okay. And you'll see in my assignment guides that I also explicitly stated the particular course objective or course outcome to which the assignment is connected, and also indicated what particular content or topics in the course they need to have learned or they need to study in order to accomplish that particular major course requirement or major assignment. As you know, assignments or course requirements of this sort require time and energy that is definitely beyond 1 week. Okay. and they are graded, of course. Now, a course guide has parts that are already found in most of our syllabi, even before they have been OBDized, like the course description, learning outcomes, or we know them. We used to know them as course objectives, the outline. A new addition is mode of delivery, because this time it's remote, and we have to tell the students a little more about that. Are we going to use a learning management system? How often and how are we going to communicate with them, etc. Okay, the course materials, we tell them what is in there. Probably it's your first time to receive a course pack, to see a course guide, a study guide. And so we tell them about those things in the course material section. Then we have a study schedule for each particular week. What topic are we going to study in class? What are the specific learning resources, or we used to call them references, and specific learning tasks or activities that we would like them to do. Course requirements, naturally. Then we have a little information about ourselves. So in the face-to-face class, we put it in the syllabus simply as our name, and maybe email address and contact information and consultation hours. With this time, to give some kind of a face, to show some humaneness and humanity to the course guide document, we introduce ourselves a little. Then we have house rules or general guidelines. As we have been told in the course Redesign 101 online course for UP faculty, we can use this template for course guide as is, or we can adopt it as we see fit or as we find appropriate. So in my case, for example, after course requirements, I explicitly stated the grading system. Okay, so that's where I put it, and I did not put the house rules at the end. So I put them somewhere before the about me or about the faculty in charge. So you'll learn a little more about these things as we move on. But if you read the files that were sent to you yesterday, I'm sure you would have seen an idea, or have gotten some kind of concrete, view of these things. Okay, that said, the question now is, why do we even have to make a course pack? And as indicated in the course guide in course redesign 101, we have to plan how to enable all of our students to learn our respective courses effectively on their own, because remote learning is different from face-to-face learning. So we're geographically apart, and that could create its own challenges. So it is designed for my course pack is designed for independent learning. So when I'm asked, for sure, the level of detail in your course pack, because I would like to support my students as much as I can in their first experience of remote and independent learning. So I figured, when I asked myself, if I were in their shoes, what would I definitely appreciate? What would I want in the course pack? So my answer to that question is that if I were a student, I would like some explicitness, clarity, okay, clarity, direction, and enough scaffolding or guidance in the documents, in the contents of the course pack. And I would, as a student, like concrete reflections of support for me throughout the semester. So I'd like to know how my professor will communicate to me. I'd like to be able to feel, even when I'm just reading the documents, like the course guide, that my professor cares. It's not all about the grades. It's not all about the fulfillment of requirements. And because I cannot see my professor, I would like to be able to receive regular and timely feedback, because I'll be on my own. I won't see my classmates. I won't see my prof. How do I know if I'm getting it right? So I tried to put myself in their shoes, and I came up with those two with those two features, connected to independent learning and connected to my desire to help them out. as much as I can. I know I will have to make changes eventually, especially once I've met them during the first week of classes. But I am hoping that I have tried to anticipate enough of their concerns, of their needs, and have to the best of my ability address them in my course pack. Now, why that explicitness and support? It's not only based on my personal experience, but you have also literature, even uh, um, in connection to tertiary level students and graduate level students, that if there's enough explicitness and support coming from their instructors, then during the semester they are less dependent on the instructor, but they are able to deliver good performance. And so I figured that if, before the SEM, like last month, a lot of the work for the EDR 221 course pack that has been sent to you came last month. Okay. So I stressed over it. If you like to use the term, I stressed over it last month so that during the semester, the students will not, forgive the term, stress me out with all their questions and concerns here, there, and everywhere. Because during the semester, honestly, I don't want more stress. Because when the semester starts, aside from teaching, we will be expected to do committee work. And then we also have other responsibilities. Some of us are like me, are involved in a major research project. Okay? Then we do extension work, especially now when there are many of our fellow men and women who are in more challenging situations than we are. And there's that call for help, especially for us at the College of Education, because our friends in the basic education sector, our friends from DepEd, are saying that they need help. Okay, so I don't call it selfish, but I don't want additional stress. Maybe you're saying, yan palang hugot mo and all that. Hindi pa lang po yan. I have a dissertation to work on. It's already long overdue as it is. So on top of everything else in the functions and responsibilities of UP faculty in a remote learning setup during a pandemic, so I have that to worry about. Ay, wala akong ganyan course, di ko problema yan. So, hindi ko kailangang maging ganun ka-explicit, ganun ka-supportive, all that. Isipin niyo lang po ganito, wouldn't you want less stress during the semester? Because if we prepare a good course pack before September 1, then we will concentrate more on monitoring and feedback and classroom management and class management during the SEM instead of worrying about what we will ask the students to do, what content we will give them, because we already have prepared for all of that prior to September 1. Besides, wouldn't you want less stress so that if you are parents and you have children who have to study from home, you will be in a better position to help them because you're less stressed, you have more time to help them in their lessons. Some have probably opted to homeschool their children, or maybe if you don't have children, maybe you have elderly parents or grandparents with you. If not that, maybe you have friends or loved ones who are especially challenged financially and psychologically during this time. I mean, those things are important for us to do too. Well, at least they are for me. And to top it all, we need to care for ourselves. We cannot care for others. We cannot care for our students if we don't care enough for ourselves. So I think those things are important. And so that's why my course pack is the way it is. I know it's not the best one. I mean, in fact, I don't know if the course teaching team in Course Redesign 101, led by Professor Pat Arinto of UPOU and UP Tacloban, Professor Iris Isiptan of UP Manila, Professor Prime Garcia of UPOU, and Professor Dog Repo of UP Diliman would actually, find it a good example. But again, at least a one for the effort, and I'd be okay with that. So, okay, where I started with something old, just like in the verse, in the rhyme. I started with the syllabus. And the syllabus that I started with is not obidized. Okay, if you received an obidized syllabus, good for you. But I started with a syllabus that's not obidized. Okay. Now, if a bride during her wedding receives a family heirloom, usually, okay, as something old to symbolize a continuity, protection for future children, you can consider a syllabus as a kind of academic heirloom. So, an academic heirloom passed on from one instructor to another as a way to symbolize the continuity of learning, the continuity of knowledge acquisition, of knowledge construction. So from one generation of students to another. But even as I started with something old, I also started with something new. And that is something we all share, this new thing. And that is a shortened semester and a new mode of delivery, remote learning. And within that context, and because of that context, as I told you before, I enrolled in the course redesign OVLE course for us in UP Diliman and a few other CUs. And if you don't have time and energy to enroll in that course, but please, if you have, make time. You can go to the website of the UP system. There's this website on remote learning. So I said the guides on how to do each step are found there, and they're very easy to access and very easy to follow. Okay. Now, the first step that I had to go through was learner and context analysis. I know it's difficult to do because we haven't met our students. But based on our prior knowledge of our students before the pandemic, I'm sure we have a general idea on what most likely our students would be like this coming semester. So in my case, in the past, our usual students in the graduate courses in reading education are not from the upper classes. They're probably lower middle class. They don't necessarily have their own laptop, computer, or internet connection. They're used to teaching their basic education students and used to attending their graduate classes in the face-to-face delivery. And like me and most Filipinos and people all over the world right now, they are facing their own financial and psychological challenges. So even if I have not met them, this is the kind of what I call a working information that I use to design my course and to think about how to deliver it, considering all those. But aside from that, I made what I call a remote learning readiness survey. Now, in UP Diliman, the computerized registration system is actually has actually added a couple of questions connected to gadget access and internet access when the students pre-register this month. But we will not get the information as instructors until after the pre-registration. And to me, that might be a little too late. Of course, I can still adjust by the first week of September, but then I would rather just consider how they might probably be like in a quote unquote, for excuse the term, worst case scenario. But aside from that, no, from the technology aspect, in remote learning, to me, it's important to find out what their expectations are, how much self-direction they have as learners, what their preferences are, if they have very good study habits, if they have learning strategies. Again, this is about independent learning, so I think these things are important for me to know. And in literacy courses, reading and writing skills are very important, just as technology and technology mediated skills and the possession of hardware and software requirements are. So I will administer that to students. And when I was asked, Porsche, when would be a good time to do it? Technically, we will not be meeting our students until September 10, but I'm sorry, but I plan to cheat my way into it. So as soon as I receive from the CRS the list of my pre-registered students together with their email addresses, I plan to email the tool to them right away, so that even just for a few days, I will have a little lead time to make the necessary changes which I believe are appropriate to make for my particular set of students. So this particular step is very important because it has a very concrete implications to course design and course delivery. For example, you will see in my course guide that I am specifically stating what our learning management system is. Well, in Diliman, we have OVLE, but I know that I may have students who will have problems accessing OVLE. And because telephone companies offer promos for FB or Messenger, then I have actually, last week, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, I opened an FB account in anticipation of the possibility that my students will find FB or Messenger more accessible and cheaper because of the promos than actually using their data in accessing OVLE. Okay? So I have tried to anticipate that. And also connected to internet access challenges, I decided that I will not have synchronous sessions for content, for any input. So I will use synchronous sessions if they're even possible for consultations, okay, clarifications, monitoring, and feedback. Not to give, okay, any new input or any particular content that will affect their performance in class. If at all there would be some kind of presentation or a lecture from a resource person, for example, this would be more for enrichment and not really for something that is required for the course. But still, I will record them and make them available for those who need to access them later on. Also, even if it is not required in the course pack, it's not in any memo. Aside from the all the different guides, I have also added a little list, a simple list of study tips, just to help the students out a little. And these are the simple study tips for them to make the most of the learning resources. What have been proven by research as helpful in independent study, like what they can do before reading, listening, or watching to the learning resource, while they're reading, listening, or watching, or and then after reading, listening, or watching the learning resource. Aside from that, per concrete implication of my analysis of my learners and their context is that I I took time to choose the learning resources, and for print-based or text-based ones, I made sure that nothing exceeded 10 pages. Well, in the past, pre-pandemic, sometimes I assign for a given week two articles, sometimes three, but I cannot do that anymore. Nobody is functioning at 100% level right now. I surely am not. I cannot expect my students to function 100% as if, it's business as usual. It's not like that. So most of my text-based learning resources are within the range of 4 to 6. I think my longest is 9 content pages. Now my the videos, there's one audio clip and there are a few videos. They do not go beyond 15 minutes each. Actually, the recommendation in the course redesign course is only 6 minutes max. Some of the videos I in my course pack are within that limit, but there are a few who are which are from 10 to 12 or 13 minutes. So why so short, Porsche? Because we in a distance learning, in a remote learning mode, it's best if we divide the topic, if we divide content into more manageable chunks instead of one long video, shorter videos, more focused, more directed. And besides, too much screen time is not so good for everyone, young or old alike, young and old alike. And because this course, EDR 221, literature-based reading programs, is highly dependent on access to and the reading of children's literature, of course, I'm including in my course pack a set of local children's books in hard copy to each student enrolled in the course for it to be for these books to be returned at the end of the semester. Why? From experience, pre-pandemic, most of students who enroll in this course do not have their own children's book collection at home. They rely on the children's books at the College of Education library, and for some of them, the library in their respective schools. And for all of them, my own small collection of children's literature, children's books in the reading department of the College of Education. But they don't have all those now. And I cannot in conscience require them to spend extra just to buy books online or just to subscribe to digital versions of books. That is so cruel of me to do. And so I've been buying local children's books on sale since June in anticipation of this particular need for support, no? This particular support that my students will need. Besides, some of you might be asking, why local children's books and why not foreign? Well, foreign books are more expensive, okay? And also because if we don't read our own children's literature, who will? I mean, if you enroll in a children's literature class in another country, they talk about their own literature. They don't talk about our literature. Besides, I know personally that even big local publishing houses have been laying off their employees. And so it's a little thing to do for the local children's book industry. Okay, and this one I will tell you now about. Excuse the term STUPID mistake that I committed. Okay, some of the old slides that I had, I updated. I packaged into new editions, but I did not write any notes for them. So I added a narration to the slides and then exported the slide to a video format. Now I had to open a YouTube account to upload this videohan that I made because I need the English auto-generated transcript in those slides. Why? Because I have to anticipate having students, even just one student, who may not even have a laptop. How much more internet access? And so I need those auto-generated English transcripts for the videos, and videohan. And so I've been slaving over that. So I would listen to my narration there in the video, and then get the necessary transcript and prepare this Word. This one is PowerPoint document because it came from PowerPoint version. So I'm currently doing all those for any student I may have who probably does not even have a laptop. Okay? Now, a more difficult thing I'm doing is getting a screenshot and the transcript of the pre-made videos that I found in the net, in YouTube, and which I have included in my course pack. So this particular video, for example, what I've done is take a screenshot of the different parts of the video and then get the corresponding transcript, like this one, for example. There, see? It's also my mistake because I got a little excited in looking for videos just to relieve the possible boredom from being subjected to print-based resources. So just for variety and for range and diversity, I included some videos. But now I have to slave over this kind of task. But I will do it. I am doing it. I am bothering to do it because I am duty bound, not to leave any student behind. Okay, I'm duty-bound not to leave any student behind. Di po ba walang iwanan sa UP Diliman man o sa ibang mga constituent units ng ating pamantasan? And on a very personal note, I bother because when I was a first-year student in UP Diliman, a first-year undergrad student, I used to submit my papers handwritten because access to a computer or to a typewriter there at the shopping center, in the old shopping center, meant extra expense. So you'd have to pay by the hour. And I would type very slowly. I'm a very slow typer and coder up to now. Okay. So what would have happened? What would have happened to me? Maybe I would not be here talking to you in this webinar if Dr. Cleofici and Dr. Aurora Gaceta did not accept my handwritten papers. So it's the least I could do to pay it forward. So even if without the pandemic, even if it's not remote delivery, I always have to remind myself that I was helped by my professors in the past, and I should do my share in helping my students. Baka sabihin niyo po, kaya naman pala may hugot siya eh. Wala akong ganyang hugot, di ko kailangan gawin lahat yan. Pero di po ba tayo mga guro ng bayan? Tayo ay mga guro ng ating mga magigiting na iska at isko na silang mga pag-asa ng ating kawawang bayan sa ngayon? Naniniwala po ako na kahit wala kayong hugot gaya ng akin, naniniwala ako na bilang mga guro ng bayan, kayo po ay gagawa ng makataong mga gawa dahil ito ang tama. Kung kayo po ay naniniwala na tayong mga guro ng bayan ay makatao, bigyan niyo po ako ng thumbs up sa chat box. Wala po yata. Di ba makatao po tayo? Kaya gagawin natin ang ating makakaya. Ayan po. Minsan po yung iba nating mga estudyante, ang tingin lang nila sa ating mga instructors nila ay parang mga nandun sa taas, hindi mga tao, hindi nakatapak sa lupa. Okay? I think now is a very good time to show our students that we are standing on the same ground as they are standing on. Yes, it is murky ground and it is shaky ground, but it does help when we know that we are standing on the same ground. Yan po. Ayan. Salamat po dun sa mga sumasang-ayon sa akin na tayong mga guro ng ating mga iska at isko ay makatao at hindi po natin hahayaan na merong isko at iska na mapag-iwanan. Okay. Ayan po, ayaw na naman pong gumalaw nitong slide. Okay. Now, aside from that, I am making a very big change for the first time. I have declared a reading week in my class. So halfway through the sem, they will be on break for, if not anything else, for some self-care. And I would always say in key portions of my course guide that if they need more support or accommodation, to please tell me. I've never had a reading week before, pre-pandemic, but now I think it's something that I can do to show support to students, to show that I understand that this is a very challenging time. Also, for the first time, I am not going to penalize late submission of requirements. In the past, pre-pandemic, there's a deduction for every day late. But now all requirements are accepted until the last day of classes, except for class participation, of course. And if they need more accommodation beyond that, then they can tell me and I'll see what I can do. Also, very unusually very unusual for a class, that is, my first house rule this time is about kindness and gentleness. And connected to that, about reaching out, asking for help, and giving help. I've never had these house rules before in any of my classes in the past. But then again, we've never been in a pandemic before. and we've never had to deliver remotely our classes during a pandemic. So these are very different times, and we are called to do different things, things we did not used to do before. So those are just some of the implications I was referring to when I said that step one, the analysis part, will have implications to course design and course delivery. Now moving on, why is my slide not wanting? Okay, there, it has moved on. Step two is organization of content. And this starts with the syllabus, and I will show you the syllabus I started with. It's this one. Okay, I will only be showing you the part with the course objectives or the course outcomes. And in particular, the course topic. Okay, so you will see that it's not OBDI. So this is what I started with. I mean, after this section of the old syllabus, the 2019-2020 syllabus, there were the requirements, of course, the simple house rules and the what do you call that? The resources, the references. And now I had to transform that old syllabus into a new one, the horizontal one. So you see, those are basically the same course outcomes, but now in the horizontal syllabus, that's OBDIs, I had to think of learning outcomes for each week, and then specific learning resources and learning activities or learning tasks. And this time I have to think in terms of what are they going to do synchronously, if at all, and then asynchronously. So from that old syllabus, it had to be this one. Okay. So there. Now, what kind of syllabus do you have? Do you have the OBDI syllabus or the basic one, the old one, like the one I started with? If you have the OBDI syllabus, wow, congratulations. It's my turn to say, buti pa po kayo. Now, if you have already, okay, an OBDI syllabus to start with, give me a thumbs up in the chat box. Tignan na po natin, ilan po ba sa atin ang meron ng OBDI syllabus sa umpisa pa lang? Ilan po sila na may OBDI syllabus sa umpisa? Wala, parang konti lang. Anyway, yung mga may OBDI syllabus na po na pinagsimulan, swerte nyo po. Okay. So, paano ka umabot sa ganun, Porsche? Paano mo siya nagawa na horizontal? What is non-negotiable, whether we're doing it remotely or face-to-face, is that the course outcomes should remain intact, should remain the same as much as possible. Now, I put the first and the last course outcomes in red because I tweaked them a bit. So instead of this more general thing, personal reviews about the value, I zeroed in on the benefits. Okay. So it's practically saying the same thing, the same essence, only phrased more succinctly and more in a more focused manner. And here, I added the word blueprint because I just wanted to make it more specific to the students that it's not a full-blown reading program that they're being asked to do. It's just a blueprint. So it was also just like just a blueprint, even pre-pandemic. It's not really a full-blown. So I just added that thing, a blueprint. So there's no major change. It has added, of course, outcomes have remained intact because these are non-negotiable. So from course to course, whatever the mode of delivery, whichever groups of students, then the course outcomes remain the same, basically the same. So there is no significant change that I made there. If at all, it's more cosmetic, more semantic, linguistic change. Okay. Now it's in the topics that I had to do a lot of work. So I had to, starting with the course outcomes, then I had to ask myself what topics are necessary to achieve the course outcomes. What can I discard? What can I integrate? What can I streamline? So here, it was a little difficult because, some topics are close to my heart and, I didn't want to let go of them. I wanted them to retain their time and their place in the course as unique subtopics for a major topic. But no, something's got to give. I had to go back to the course outcomes. So some topics were integrated. You can see there. So old syllabus on the left, my decision in the middle, and where some topics went in the new syllabus. Okay? So a lot of integration happened because we're down to a 13 week semester. The last week is for final exams, right? Then here, I streamlined. So this one used to be reading programs, and now instead of reading programs, reading process, and all sorts of reading programs in general, I focused only on literature-based reading programs. Why? Because the course outcomes are all connected to literature-based reading programs anyway. They're not connected to other kinds of reading programs. They're not connected to other theories, other views of the reading process. So I got rid of those things and just retained the part that is specific to literature-based reading programs, because that's what is essential for the achievement of learning outcomes. Now, for the last major topic, you can see there, oh, course, why does the new one seem to have more? No, actually, it doesn't have more. It was just task analyzed. So you see ABC here are actually all steps involved in planning. I mean, B and C are actually part of letter A. But if I retain it this way, and I tried doing it just this way, it was very difficult to divide the topics across several weeks. So I figured I will just spell out the different steps in planning and designing. And when I had already spelled them out, I had task analyzed the process, then it was easier for me to divide them across the different weeks in very manageable, realistic chunks, very doable on the part of students. Like the first two were for this week, like week 8, week 9, and then the next one week 10, etc., etc. Okay. So that's what I did in terms of the topics. Now, for the learning outcomes, so Porsche, how did you think of the learning outcomes? Again, I had to go back to the course outcomes. So what do I want them to do with this content, with this topic? So I thought of a particular behavior, particular thinking skill, that would help them achieve the course outcomes later on. So that's how I thought of it. You could actually research online, go online and Google Bloom and Bloom's taxonomy, and you will have there a ready list of verbs that you can use in phrasing your learning outcomes. So see, okay, just for the 3 weeks here. So all these outcomes, the student should be able to achieve these learning outcomes on a weekly basis because these are necessary for the achievement of the bigger course outcomes. That's how I went about doing it. Another consideration is what the UP Academic Credit Transfer System calls the time on task. So a 3-unit course is equivalent to a minimum of 100 hours of student workload for the semester. So 114, that's a lower limit. We have 14 weeks, so I divided that and came up with the magic number of 8. So for a 3-unit course, then the student works for 8 hours. I included this in the course guide because the students might be surprised why there are some, in all of the weeks that I have in the study guides, the approximate time they need to comply with everything there, do everything there is more than 3 hours. They're used to thinking of it only in terms of the actual class. But that's just part of it. The actual teaching learning in class, in the face to face, is just part of the 8 hours. What we are not used to computing is that before class, they should have read or studied an assignment, assigned reading or assigned readings for the class, or maybe after class there are some exercises or some homework that they have to do, and then not to mention that they have major course requirements. So those are all included in the computation of the minimum of 8 hours of student workload every week. Okay. Now I also said that there are, of course, there are topics that are less heavy compared to others, but there are some weeks and topics and weeks that would be heavier. But what I designed in my course is that nothing exceeds 6 hours. so that they will have time to work on other course requirements. So imagine, if they have 2 extra hours out of the 8 every week, then they will have time for course requirements. I will tell you later on how I went about computing approximately how much time it would take them. Now, I mentioned earlier that I have a reading week, and week one is orientation, and I did not include any real content for week one because I want that really focused on orientation, on on the new on the shortened semester, on the delivery and all that, and leveling off, kumustahan, okay ba kayo, ano yung mga kailangan nyo, ano yung pwede natin gawin para tulungan ng isa't isa, those things. I mean, the first week, the first meeting has never been so important before. I mean, has never been as important and as urgent to do properly as it will be this coming semester. And the week 13, instead of integration, I put their submission of final requirements. I don't have an exam in final exam in this course. And I moved to week 14, the integration period, so that they have already done everything. And week 7 is reading week. So that means I only had to prepare for 10 content weeks, which made my job of deciding on the content, the topics, and the weekly learning outcomes even more challenging because I had to make a lean and mean course, so to speak. Excuse the phrase. I had to make things succinct as much as I could. So that's what I did in terms of the organization of content. So we've walked through the first two steps, and now maybe we have time for a couple of questions. Marty?
Okay. Thank you, Portia, for those interesting facts and tidbits, especially since we have a lot of faculty that may just be starting with creating their course packs. Ma'am, I have here po one question regarding your quick lecture in the part of videos po. So if your usual lecture from Prof Yang po ito, if your usual lecture lasts 1 hour and you create a recorded version, it will obviously go beyond 15 minutes. Is this included in your definition of video clips?
Oh, actually, because the recommendation of the core of the teaching team in the course redesign is to deliver content in manageable chunks. I did not have any long full blown lecture like I used to do in like I used to have in the face to face. Very bad practice. My ed colleagues might be embarrassed now, but I only, I chose very specific topics or subtopics and worked around my narrated slides on those topics. So they're not full blown 1 hour lecture. So if we're thinking of the usual, for example, 1 hour lecture for a session in undergrad class, I'm sure within that long lecture there are smaller parts like subtopics that could actually stand alone, and for that particular subtopic we can think of specific activities or tasks for students. That's basically what I did. Like for example, for children's lit, instead of having one long video on the definition and the issues in the definition of children's lit and the academic and personal value, so those were divided into two. Personal value is one short video of 6 minutes or less, and then the academic value is the same way. For the different steps in the design, the planning, and the designing of literature-based programs, my last major topic, I used to just do it in one round, one class, because it's a grad class, it's a 3 hour class. So what I did instead was to have learning resources for each particular step. I did not, okay, for that last topic. I did not rely on videos. I have more print-based, text-based learning resources than I have videos. Ayun po. So we could divide that into smaller chunks by specific subtopic. there. Or even if the whole, if it were whole, it is for one particular session or meeting in class, no, face to face. If this were still face to face, think of it as, pausing in the middle of your 1 hour lecture and making the students answer questions or do a little task. Now, instead of that being face to face, we have to write it down and make and reflect it in what's called the study guide and ask students to do it. It's very difficult to be in front of a screen for that long. In fact, this webinar, I hope we will not go over time because it's not good for our eyes. It's not good for, for self-care. It's not healthy to stay in front of the screen for so long. So there are those research-based results as well that have been used as the basis for recommendations of keeping the videos short. Okay, and not to mention information processing and and attention span among other things.
Okay. All right.
There,
Thank you.
Marty.
Yeah, thank
Next,
you.
maybe
Here's
one
another
more.
one, ma'am. Yeah, maybe one more, ma'am. May last for the moment. Meron pa naman po tayong other Q&A session. So please put those questions and answers na lang dito na sa ating Q&A page so we can keep track of them. By the way, there have been many questions po about assessment tools and tests. So we'll be
Okay.
answering those na lang, ma'am, later sa assessment part of
Yes. Okay. Yes po.
okay,
Yes.
but
Moms and sirs. Oh, parang
sige po.
parang
Opo.
Jollibee. Good
Later na
morning,
lang
ma'am.
po yung
Good morning,
part
sir.
of
Thank you,
assessments.
ma'am. Um,
How about this one?
I will answer for assessment related questions when we go to that particular step that has something
Okay.
to do with
Good.
assessment. That is, I think, step 4, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
All
And
right.
then later, if we'll try to, I'll try to finish this as soon as I can so that there's more time for questions. So we will move on, Marty. We will move
Tama mo
on
na.
po,
Okay.
ha?
Sure, sure,
Okay,
sure.
sorry
Sige,
po.
ma'am.
Balikan po natin yan mamaya.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
so we
ma'am.
had the first two steps. We the some that relied on something old and something new. And now I'm sure there are a lot of questions about the learning resources. Porsche, did you write modules? No, I did not. Okay, as you can see in the slide, it's select and curate the learning resources. It doesn't say select and create. So it's a one letter difference, but it is a universe of difference. Okay, it's curate po, select and curate the learning resources. And so it's in fact saying practically, at least in my case, what I had to keep in mind was there's no need to reinvent the wheel, Porsche. Work with what is already available. That's why you just select and curate. So how did I do it? I borrowed a lot. So this is a new addition, borrowing something borrowed. So I borrowed the works of more able people, or at least I borrowed works that are better than mine. And I don't have any issue with that. It's not about me. It's about providing the best possible learning experience this semester for my students. And so, what were the resources I borrowed? The recommendation is, as much as possible, to go for open educational resources. I tried, but I'm sorry, Professors Arinto, Isiptan, Garcia, and Grepo. I tried, but I did not find any that suited my purpose. So thanks to good old Google, there were this existing resources made by other people that I found online. Okay, so that's a video. This is a video as well. But I also found unusually a very good article from a respected author, Kathy Short. She's one of the names in children's literature textbooks in the Western world, and it's free. I got it for free, so no problem distributing it, sharing it to students, and distributing it among them. So I used, existing resources like that, as long as they suited my purpose. They're not beyond 10 pages, they're beyond 15 minutes, and they had content that was not questionable as far as the course and the course outcomes are concerned. I also borrowed resources written by people I personally know, and I simply had to ask permission from them. Like this one from teacher, or Professor Lalaine Aquino of DECL, CAL. Okay. This article was published in the Rap Journal in 2007, but I don't have any copy or any access to that journal right now. It's not yet online, and I don't have the print copy. Dr. Aquino does not seem to have the copy as well. So this is the manuscript in Word version. I also borrowed from students. Oh, why students? That's one of the good things, one of the rewards of being a teacher in UP. You meet students who are better than you in so many ways. And so I'm thankful that I had some of those students in some of my classes in the past. Of course, why did you not just use your own work? I mean, I was a student in EDR 221 before, but admittedly, my work during that time was not as good as, I was nothing like the excellent works of some of these students of mine. So there, I just had to get in touch with them. And thanks again to technology, I was able to email Professor Aquino. I was able to email Pet de Patillo, not email, I mean Messenger. And I was able to email John Pau Sandicho, who is now a junior faculty member of the DECL, CAL. Eh? And so they gratefully, okay, no, graciously rather, and I'm grateful for that. They graciously allowed their works to be included in the course pack. And I just simply added that it's not for sharing or distribution, it's only for educational purposes of EDR 221, and made a quick summary of what each particular document is about. Now, I think what is more challenging is when I decided to include copyrighted print resources in my course pack. As you can see, it looks like a picture, right? Yes, and then I just put it to I just put it in a Word file. Okay, this is copyrighted material. That's why I limited it to only one page. I don't know if I still violated IPR, but what I did for copyrighted print materials was to limit as much as possible the number of pages I'll use. So that one came from a book that had, I think, that has more than 300 pages. So I think I did not, I did not even reach the what, 10% fair use. I don't even know the rules. I mean, the laws in the US and in North America. And I'm sorry, I also don't know the laws in the Philippines where IPR is concerned. Okay. And then this is from another copyrighted print book. And what I did was just, to choose the ones that I liked and that I needed for purposes of my class and retype. So this is just 4 pages. They are different scales, okay? Scales that can be used to approximate the reading level of the material. So this is just 4 pages out of, a book that has around 200 pages. So why, Porsche? Why did you not use your own resources? I mean, my default was what resources are already out there. Because as I said, I'd like to use the expertise of others. It's like standing on the shoulders of giants. And as I stand on the shoulders of giants, it's not only my hope that their expertise, their understanding, their knowledge would not only rub off on me, but would also rub off on my students. And hopefully, after the rubbing off, we would be able to maybe contribute or add on to that knowledge and understanding. So, as I said, I tried to limit the number of pages, but please don't take my word for it. I'm not sure if I violated IPR. So this afternoon from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., I would like to invite everyone to attend with me the this intellectual property right connected webinar. So this is really meant for us faculty who are preparing our course packs. So it's highly possible it's possible that I might have to change some of the resources that I have selected for my course pack, but I would rather do that before September 1 than be faced with a legal challenge or a legal issue once the semester starts. So all copyright related questions, I am not the right person to answer them. The most I could say is that In my course pack, I tried to limit the number of pages that I took as is from the different copyrighted materials, making sure that they do not even reach 10% of the whole book. Okay. So to those who asked, can we use our existing files, notes, and existing slides and PowerPoint presentations? Actually, I also did that. So aside from using something borrowed, I also used something old, like my old slides, and I just made a new packaging on them. Gave them a new look, or maybe updated the content. Like for example, this one. So this is an old PowerPoint presentation. It's embarrassing. My colleagues at EdDoc, especially at those at the EdTech, educational technology, would say, "Porsche, you're violating the rules of educational technology. Why do you have very dense slides?" Okay, yeah, very bad. See, I realized that. Look at that. See? And so in my course pack, I repackaged that. So there. So it's not as dense anymore. And then I added this time I was able to add my own work at least. Okay, so there it is. So hopefully, I mean, this is better than the ugly PowerPoint presentation. And it's a new packaging, it's a new edition, quote unquote, and it has narration in it. Okay. So I did that for a number of slides, and then I had some existing Word documents like this one. It's a Word document. Just took a screenshot or screenshots. And the new edition, quote unquote, is simply one that has been divided into manageable parts that will be directly linked to specific topics, specific steps in the process of designing a reading program. And so this is simply what I did. No? That long document, I just broke it down to more manageable parts that are specific to particular targets during a specific week, and added a note that will give an overview, that will summarize or briefly describe what that document is about. So that long document has been divided into that document and this document, because they belong to two different steps in the process that I'm talking about in my course, in my course EDR 221. And then I had an old presentation like this one on reading programs. Remember, I told you before that I let go of some of this because it's not essential to the achievement of the course outcomes. So all those that are not connected to literature-based reading programs, I got rid of them. And I realized that I don't have to make a new PowerPoint presentation or copy and paste. A Word document will serve the purpose very well. And that's what I realized. Why did I even make a PowerPoint presentation on that? It's not needed because everything is practically self-explanatory. So why have a PowerPoint presentation and belabor the point in class when my students are graduate students and practicing teachers? And so a Word document is better, and they just have to read it. And I just have to come up with questions that I would like them to consider, or an activity that I'd like them to do in connection to this particular document, for example. So see, thanks to the order, the memo to make course packs, I am belatedly discovering and trying to correct the mistakes that I committed repeatedly in the past. Okay, and then I have these slides. Okay. Okay. Now tell me, do you think I have actually included those slides as they are in my course pack? Give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you think I included those slides as they are in the course pack. Let me see. Or if you were teaching my course, would you include those slides as they are in your course pack? Will they serve the purpose? Will they be appropriate to include as they are in your course pack? What do you think? Okay. Hmm. Okay. So those of you who said no, no, you don't, you shouldn't include that as is, and then probably some of you said yes, but actually the answer is no. I did not include that as is in my course pack because you see, let me go back to it. This is a kind of PowerPoint presentation that requires my explanation, that requires a narration from me, so to speak. Because I cannot assume that in terms of children's literature, the students, even if they're practicing teachers, know what I am talking about. I cannot even assume that they are immersed in children's literature already when they come to my class. And all these children's books, I cannot assume that they even know what these are, that they've even seen it, or much less have read it. I have read them. So this cannot stand alone without my explanation, without my input. So I cannot use these slides as they are. I cannot use them as they are because the content in the slides is not enough to stand alone, to be useful enough for students to read and to achieve the learning outcomes for that week. So that's why I updated these slides because I could not use them as they are. I also updated the examples and updated and lessened some of the examples. Okay. So if the question is, can you use your slides and your files, your documents as they are? Sure. If really updating them or giving them a new edition or new packaging is not needed. But as you can see, I was not able to use some of my slides as they are because they just are not appropriate to use as they are for purposes of my class, for purposes of the content I want the students to learn, and for purposes of achieving the learning outcomes for that week connected to that topic or content. So that's what I mean. So in this case, I am somehow thankful that some of my slides were very dense because all the content is there. So those slides, like what I showed you earlier, I just copied and pasted the content into a Word file because uh, they're standalone anyway. No need to explain. So that's what I did for that. So for those who are asking, come on, Porsche, it's impossible that you did not create any learning resource. Yes, I did, but only for context specific, Philippine context specific content that is not readily found in existing resources. Not those resources from North America or Europe, and definitely some are found in one copyrighted local resource. But again, the issue is it's copyrighted and I don't have a copy of the book with me right now. So what am I talking about? Like this one, for example. So these are all local children's books, and in the way that they're presented here and the way that they serve my purpose is absent in even in that particular copyrighted resource that I referred to earlier. Okay. So this I had to do. And then there's a narration. Okay, there's a narration in this particular slides. So that's the value added of the newly created learning resources. Otherwise, if there's no value added to new resources that I would create, what's the use of creating them? Again, why reinvent the wheel when you can use whatever, when you can work and use whatever is currently available? Besides, I really honestly don't have the time to create new resources. much less write a module. So when Sir Ton Clemente of OAT asked me to speak on module development, not even writing, development takes a long process. I said, no, I will not speak on something I did not even do. I will not speak on something that I don't believe should be done at this point, given the circumstances. And that is write our own modules. That is practically going to kill me if I did that. I mean, come on, I want to stay alive for my class and for, for my family, for my loved ones. And remember, I still have a dissertation to write. Okay. So in the PDF version of the slides that I gave you, has been left blank. Considering step number 3, what is your note to self? What's your note to self? Remember, it's select and curate learning resources. Do not there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Work with what is available. So what will be a good note to self that you may have? Think about it. You can type it there or you can write it down. Okay? I doubt if your note to self is write your module for every topic. If that is your note to self, you should be talking in the next webinar. Okay, my note to self is, it may be different from yours, but that's okay. My note to self for this particular step is, creating the learning resource is not the default, it is the last resort. Even the course redesign 101 is saying that creating your own learning resource is the last resort. So that's my note to self for this one. And so at this point, maybe we can have one question, Marty, all about step 3, the learning resources.
All right. Ma'am pala, I think we have a little over 30 minutes left. If you'd prefer, ma'am, gusto niyo sa dulo na lang po tayo magkaroon ng one big Q&A
No,
session.
just one question, one topic relevant question, step relevant question. Not
Okay.
about IPR because I'm not the best person for that.
Okay, let's have one na lang, ma'am. For ito, ma'am, medyo light lang, but marami po kasing nagtatanong about this. How do you provide consultation hours? Kasi I think meron po tayong rule with regards to asynchronous classes, no? So meron
Mm-mm.
tayong mga rules regarding kung anong bawal, anong hindi. So how do we make consultation hours work better and more efficiently for both the teacher and the students?
Okay, so it's not specific. Okay, I'll just have a quick answer to
Yes, ma'am.
that.
Yes,
That is how I thought of it. Okay, it's not connected to learning resources, but what I figured, ma'ams and sirs, is I will do it via Facebook Messenger. I mean, not all of my students would probably have their own laptops and internet connection, but I haven't met a graduate student in Edu that doesn't have a cell phone. And with the telcos providing promos here and there, it wouldn't cost so much. It's more accessible. I wish, okay, if I wish I could contact them via text in Globe or Smart and all that, but unfortunately po, I am not on roaming. I am not in the Philippines. So I cannot call them for free. I'm not in the Philippines. I have not been based in the Philippines since I started my PhD program 4 years ago. So the most I could do in my case is Facebook Messenger. But for those in the Philippines, and if students have cell phones, a phone call, there are promos for only call, only text, no? or text message. I think that's the fastest way of doing it and most accessible. Definitely more accessible than going online via email or Zoom, for example. So I thought about those. So and I figured that in my case, the most viable for both my anticipated students, out in up incoming students and me, considering my context, is Facebook. Facebook. Okay,
okay. So yeah,
so
I think
we'll have
yeah,
more questions later. So we
later na
move
lang
to
po.
the
Yes.
fourth step.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you,
Marty.
ma'am Portia. Take it away.
Okay,
Okay.
so we had those 3 steps. Awesome, and I at least I used something old, new, and something borrowed. And I also used something old, new, and borrowed when it comes to designing the learning activities. Step 4. So what's something old? Oh, I use, I tried to use workshop type or hands-on type of activities. I tried at least in my course pack to still have opportunities for discussion throughout the SEM. Okay, but only remotely. I'm thinking I thought of it in terms of UVLE, but as I said, maybe something more viable is a Facebook or Messenger group. Something borrowed, the think, pair, share activity that you can find in the first few weeks of my class. I think weeks 2, 3, and 4, if I'm not mistaken, in the study guides. That's not something I thought of. It's an old activity. And then, well, something new will be a greater use of technology, like for example, the use of OVLE, if my students are okay with it, if they find it viable. Okay. Otherwise, as I said, though an option would be Facebook group. So this is my class, and this is my room in OVLE. I've already prepared it. Okay, because I there. So all the resources that are all the guides that I were sent to you yesterday, and all the learning resources in that guide are either here or have their links here, because OVLE cannot handle files that are heavy. It has a certain limit. And the videohan, the PowerPoint, the rated PowerPoints, which I made into videohan, they're part of it. So I just provided the link to, I have a new YouTube account. My gosh, ang babaw ko. Okay. Ngayong bago ko lang pong natutunan yan. Okay. Ayan. So it's not different from the course pack. It contains the electronic versions of the course pack, the digital versions, and the discussion forums are already here. So as you can see, okay, let me see, okay. DF0, oh, that's just intro. So it's DF0. And DF1, it's here. This is where students will talk to each other there. So I've already uploaded all the guide questions. They have a copy of all these guide questions for all the discussion forum in the class participation guide. And it's also here where I'm asking them to submit their
Ay, ma'am, sorry po, yung slides po ata ay nag-freeze.
I'm sorry.
The slides po ata have frozen. Could you check po if it's moving on your end?
Okay, but are they seeing the course site?
No, ma'am. May nagre-report po
Oh,
na hindi
okay.
po siya.
Sorry. But anyway, the point is the one in the course site. Okay. So this is how my course site looks like.
Ayan.
Okay. So that is how it looks like. Let me show that again. Ayan. So these are forums, these are students where students talk to each other and all. And there are official quote unquote discussion forums. So those are, PDF versions of everything that's there in the folder that was sent to you earlier. There are also the learning resources, print-based learning resources there, and links to the videos. Okay. So it's not a different thing from the course pack. It's just migrating the course pack here, which may not necessarily be applicable to some students. And so I shared with you or told you some of the options I have prepared for and I am continuously preparing for. Now, for these learning activities, the learning activities I chose for my course revolved around these particular guidelines. So the interaction, the three kinds of interaction: learner content, learner interaction. And I had to make sure that the activities will lead to the achievement of learning outcomes. The instructions are clear. I tried to estimate the time for completion, and I tried to make the different activities within the week and across the weeks connected to each other, so that they will come together as a unified whole, or maybe they will come together as a case of the sum is more than the sum of the whole is more than the sum of its parts. And this I try to reflect in the study guide that I made for each week. Like for example, you have a copy of this along with all the other study guides, course guide, assignment guides, etc. Okay. It was not required by the course I took by the teaching team. They didn't require it, but I figured it will help the students if I start the study guide with a short recap of what we discussed, what we studied the previous week. And then I set apart the objective, which is actually the learning outcome for that particular week, the learning outcome found in the horizontal syllabus. Okay, and that is that. See, it's like that across the different study guides. And then you see here the learning resources. These are the ones that are connected to that particular topic for that particular week. Again, found in the horizontal syllabus. Wow, Porsche, you are asking them to read so many. You're violating your own rule of empathy and support. No, actually, this one is I think a one pager, a two pager, a one pager, one pager. So most of these print-based resources, text-based resources are one pagers, except for one which has 2 pages. And this video of genres of children's lit, it's less than 15 minutes. I think it's even less than 10, this one. This is where I give local examples of each of the different genres. Examples of local children's books that are in the set of books that I have put aside to lend to my students. So look here. So that is the second step. Either they read or to watch, or they read and watch. So I have 5 learning resources there, but very manageable. Very manageable. Okay. And then, as you can see, what they are supposed to do is that, they take note of how they're similar or different from each other, because, it's useless making them read the same thing using different, read the same content using different resources. But there are some similarities, but there are differences across these resources on how they have explained, how they have defined, explained the different genres. Okay. And there it is. See, this is how I apply one of the study tips that, as you read something, as you watch something, you should be actively involved in it. So as you read, take note of how blah, blah. As you watch the video, take note of something, something. Okay? And this is my attempt for them to have learner content interaction. So it's not a passive activity. So as they read each document, they are actively thinking about something. As they watch the video, they are actively thinking about something. So that's my attempt of promoting learner content interaction. Now, as you can see, after they've done that, this is the thinking. This is what do I want them to do now? They're finished reading, they're finished watching. And so this is what I'd like them to do. And it is connected once again to the learning outcome. So they have to choose particular books for specific genres, which is another way of saying classify children's books into different genres. And now they have to do it first by themselves, but after that they have to find a partner. So this has to be done asynchronously. So the assumption here is that they've exchanged numbers. I will say that in during the first meeting, or the first week, they've exchanged numbers, they've exchanged messenger or Facebook accounts, those things. So they will then find partners and they will discuss. And that's my attempt at learner-learner interaction. Because this is something that I have asked them to do face-to-face pre-pandemic. So I bring all the books in class. So after a short input on the genres, what they are, and then an example for each one, at least one example, then I give them the time to individually select the one book for each genre and then to find a partner. So I'm trying to approximate that in a remote learning mode. And again, it's important that there is learner-learner interaction. Oh, this is just how they want them to summarize their answers for easier reading. And the dig deeper, it's all I always put it as optional. So I made sure that the learning outcome, this one, okay, for the week, or the learning outcomes for the week, will have been achieved even if they don't go to this extent. So this is more for, again, for further deeper learning and for enrichment. Then the resources. And then I have activity two. Wow, so many activities. Okay. But activity two, the participating in the discussion, whether it's in Ovle or in the Facebook or Messenger group, is simply sharing the output or their answers in activity one. So what I mean, I repeat, by output in my study guides is just the approximation of, yeah, whatever they have produced within class. I mean, if this were face to face. So it's an in-class thing. It's not it's not something that they will have to use 3 weeks or 2 weeks to be able to complete. No, it's an in-class thing. Think of it as an in-class thing. It's not a major output like they have to prepare for a report, and that takes a while. I mean, it's not something that you do in class. You have to take, maybe need several weeks to come up with a report or something. So there, so it's just sharing it, okay? Sharing their answers in the first activity to the whole class. And this is connected to the fact that I want them to see that the activities are interconnected to each other. So activity one actually feeds into activity two. And also, it's not moving. Okay, come on, move. Why is this happening to me again? The question is, again, related to the learning outcome. So it's just the same. And the participation in discussion is my attempt to, again, promote learner-learner interaction. But because I'm part of the discussion, I will comment on what they say. It's also a form of learner-teacher interaction. And every week, you will see in my study guide that I have as the last activity reflection on the lesson, which is also a form of formative self-assessment, which we will have more of in the next step. Okay. So, Porsche, how did you go about trying to estimate how long it will take each activity? Uh, as I used to do when I was teaching basic ed, I used some kind of a proxy approach to it. I tried doing the activity by myself. I tried reading the resource, watching the video, going about the actual learning tasks. Then, if in the basic ed, our rule of thumb is multiply the length of time by three, because these are young children, these are young students. This time, I tried to just double the length of time that it approximately took me. So they're graduate students, they're not young children anymore. So even if some, okay, you will see some resources, references online that still recommend times three. But in my case, I'm just multiplying it by two. But even if I multiply it by three, even if it exceeds 8 hours, remember the 8 hour a week computation is on the lower limit of the ACTS, Academic Credit Transfer System of UP. Of course, but those are difficult to do, those study guides. I mean, they're like lesson plans. Hindi po yan lesson plan. The study guides are for the students' use. They guide students. A lesson plan is something like this. It's for the teacher's use. It's something to guide the teacher. As you can see, ipapakita ng guro, ipapakita ang larawan, ipapakita ng guro, and this is how our lesson plans are. Okay, sasabihin ng guro, bibigyan ng pansin ng guro, itatanong ng guro, ganito, ganon, ganon. So it's a guide it's a plan that the teacher is supposed to put into action. Okay, you wouldn't want to write a lesson plan. I didn't make a lesson plan because this is quite tedious. Okay. So I repeat, it's study guide. It's for the students' use. It's not a lesson plan, which is for the teacher's use. Okay. And the study guide, we were given a template by the teaching team. I just simply followed that and maybe improved on it or adopted it a bit. So that's what I did for that. I also did what I call an activity guide, which is beyond individual reading, and in my case, beyond a particular topic or content, and definitely beyond a week's load. And in my course, it is the class participation, which is throughout the semester. And I made the guide for that. Again, The alternative that I think will be a very viable option is do it in Facebook or Messenger group either. So these are the details that I am giving the students, even some reminders and mechanics on how they go about participating in the discussion forum, whether it's in Oble or not, even some netiquette over there. I just don't want to assume that they already know all these things. So better to have something there as a guide. And so you have all those, and they have all the questions ready. So those students who are very fast and who are so bibo and biba, they can prepare their answers to these questions ahead of time, because as expected, students will be working at different paces. So because the course pack is ready for the whole term and I've laid it down for all of them, then they can plan their time better, and they can plan their effort better. And see, you have there the rubric. Porsche, why is your rubric so detailed? Because again, I want them to be properly guided. It didn't start out like this, but through the years, I learned. Gosh, why are you making them, assess themselves and assess their peers? At least for this one, they get to be involved in assessing themselves. Again, based on research, especially among adult learners, which graduate students are, and which our undergraduate students are right now because of K to 12, they come to us as adults, at least 18. The continuing students are probably older than 18. Research shows that if adult learners are involved in their own learning, the activities that they do, the tasks they do, and in the way that they assess themselves, then they develop greater ownership of the learning process. And we want students to own their learning. They are responsible for their learning. We are responsible for facilitating that. But we cannot learn for them. They have to learn for themselves. And right now, or I mean, in the coming SEM, primarily they have to learn by themselves, mostly. So I repeat, for this particular step, I wrote a study guide for each week and an activity guide for class participation that is good across the whole SEM. Now, some of you might say, Portia, we have to write those down. Don't worry, because you already thought about these things. You said them face to face. You did them in class. You know what worked. You know what you said there. You've thought about it. And that's the hardest part. The hardest part is the thinking. And if it's not your first time to teach, you've you've thought about this before. We just have to go to the next step and write it down for our students, because we can't tell this to them face to face anymore. So the thinking is done. And so what's your note to self? Can you show me, I mean, in the chat box, what is your note to self in connection to the designing of the learning activities? Is there any? What is your note to self? I don't see anything coming in the chat box. Okay. So this is the great reveal. What was my note to self? Start from experience, not from scratch. Okay. For our new faculty who would be teaching for the first time, please do not hesitate to reach out to our more senior colleagues, because I'm sure they will be willing and ready to help you. Okay. If you cannot start from experience, start with what and who you have, and these are your more able and more experienced senior colleagues. Okay, so let's help our more junior colleagues, because they need us at this time. I know we'll be busy with our own tasks, but imagine how much more challenging it will be for them. So let's give them an extra hand in this. Okay. And so, any questions, Marty? Maybe one question only
Okay, maybe you can check
for
out
designing learning activities.
for designing. I think one of the main questions that I've found, ma'am, when it comes to sa design po, would be yung internet connectivity po. Parang how do you plan for activities that, for example, have a deadline and would have intermittent connections? Like for example, ang context po nito ay, for example, they're having internet service provider issues which would say affect exam taking. Do you provide alternative courses po of action for these situations in the course pack?
Okay. Currently, I don't have it in. I mean, those specific, the specific alternatives. I'm just saying, or any viable option. So I can still revise my course guide. I have time for that if I want to be more specific. So as I said, those with internet connection problems, really, in my case, the most viable option that I can think of that is student friendly, at least for my anticipated students, is a Facebook group. Okay, a Facebook group or a messenger group. Now, if even that is not possible, because I already prepared, for example, all the discussion questions for all the discussion forums, then the students can simply write down or encode their answers and send them to me, and then I will just really have to find a way to for those written answers, text-based answers to be sent to them. And if that's not possible, if a class discussion is not possible, then I really just have to work with students one at a time or two at a time, maybe not the whole class. And still try to promote learner-learner interaction as well as, learner-instructor interaction. So for the different learning resources that would require internet connection, like the videos, I said, I already mentioned earlier how I am preparing more text-based, no? Text-based versions of those. It's a little tedious, but I will do what I can for students. So I
Oh,
hope that answers the question in the meantime.
yes. Ay, ma'am, quick announcement lang po before you continue po with the lecture. To those who would like to have a certificate for this course, kindly make sure to answer the feedback form. We will be resending that in the chat box again. And sige ma'am, thank you. Yun lang po.
Okay. And so we have walked through those four steps. We move to assessment of learning. And once again, it's something old, something new, something borrowed. That's the same case again. So something old, I used old files concerning, requirements I gave my students in this same class in the past. And the something new component something new aspect of that old requirement is connected to the use of technology. Okay. So look, this is something I used in 2013, 2014. Oh gosh, Porsche, so even before the pandemic, even before remote learning, you already had those. When I started feeling, when I realized that my age was no longer in the calendar, in the monthly calendar, and I felt that, I was forgetting things, and I could not stay awake for more than 24 hours. I used to stay awake straight for 60 hours. So I started, writing down notes here and there and not throwing things away. And so those were the things I'm now relying on. So may, basurera daw ako, sabi ni Teacher Dina Ocampo. So I don't throw away stuff and files. So now, yan, may pera sa basurahan. May yaman, di pala. May yaman sa basurahan. Ayan po, kasama yan sa mga dapat sana nasa basurahan na. Ayan, okay, yan po. So ganyan po siya dati. It's a pair work, and then they self-assess and peer assess. Now, the new version for the coming semester is like this. So basically, it's still the same. Look at it po, it's basically still the same. It's still pair work. Okay, so you still have that guide. So what is different now is that I also provided them, I'm providing my students for the first time a list of pre-selected websites and YouTube channels where where there is a reading aloud of children's books. The reading aloud shows the book itself, and the illustrations are there, the text are there. So the students who are watching the videos, or who are watching, the videos in YouTube or the videos in the websites, can still vicariously read the text and see the illustrations. However, I know I'm anticipating that there might be students who cannot access the net. So for those students who have access problems, then I will be lending them more hard copy books. So more than the ones that I will lend to students who don't have internet problems. So that's for the children's books and also for the novels. So of course, the list here includes novels that I have personally read. So when I evaluate their assignment, it's fairer to them because I have read the books, and the books that I will be lending them are books I have also read personally. Okay, so that's what I mean by something old, given a certain new twist. And then something borrowed. This one, this is my go-to formative assessment. For each week, it's the same. It's the same. Bakit Porsche? Ba't hindi ka nag-quiz? Ba't hindi ka nag-ganito or ganon? Well, for one, personally, for my learning outcomes, a usual quiz is not going to do the trick. It's just not so appropriate. And besides, even if it was, I honestly don't have the time to make a quiz for each week. So I figured, what's another way of doing it, which will still serve the purpose of formative assessment. It will allow me to monitor student progress and allow me to make the necessary adjustments in the course. And so I figured that the good old-fashioned sentence completion task, which I first encountered when I was a student teacher in UPIS, thanks to the late Dr. Neneng Hermosa and former principal Dr. Teret de Villa. Okay. So there, I used to think that, and now I know that. So I can spot immediately what it was that they learned significantly. And then, however, I'm not sure. Then what are the students not sure about? What are they still confused about and all? And is there some kind of ownership of learning over here that I hope I plan, or maybe there is something that they will suggest for the next week. So I don't know how that will look like. And then I get to sense how they're feeling so far in the course, and that will help me decide on certain adjustments. I think the other, was it last night or earlier today, I had a conversation via email with Dr. Pacheco, asking me about some formative assessment. And later on, I will share with you what I have thought about in connection to his primary question. And so you've seen this, and now I'm thinking that I can still revise this to include something like, I found the activity, a particular activity, blank. Okay, this activity easy because, and then I found this particular activity difficult because, and I hope there would be a change in blank because blank. So I think if I add something like this to my existing five incomplete sentences, I will be in a much better position to make the necessary adjustments in the activities, no, the learning activities for the coming week, for example, and in how they're delivered. For those of you are asking, so we can't make quizzes anymore. Of course, you can still do quizzes, okay? But why did I do it this way? Because this is what my intent is, and as I said, it's based on research on adult learners. Okay, that's why it is the way it is. It's both reflective and evaluative somehow. So those who are asking, Porsche, can we still have quizzes? Yeah, if they serve your purpose, if they're the most appropriate to assess the achievement of the learning outcomes you set for that particular week. Like for example, this one. This is freely available at OVLE. It's one of the learning objects from the School of Economics. So here, okay. So this is interactive, but this is just a screenshot. So there it goes. And assuming that the student is finished reading the content, going through the content, and then there's a kind of a quiz here, but it's a self-test. Like this one, what is your answer here? The change in the demand for chicken can be caused by, is it A, B, or C? What's your answer? So if a student chooses letter A, the student is told that the answer is wrong, but look here, there is an explanation that tells the student why it is wrong. So this becomes a teaching moment, a moment to correct whatever misconception the student has, even after going through all the learning resources and the different learning activities. Now, if you chose letter B and it's correct, there is that short explanation as well. Okay? And letter C, I mean, the same as the explanation for the wrong answer in letter A. So that there will be no issue with, intellectual honesty and Googling the answers and all that. And also to make them a little more responsible for their own learning, like adults should take responsibility for the things they do, education included. Then I would go for a self-test like this. Anyway, the formative assessment tasks are not supposed to be graded, but really they should monitor student progress. And if we're able to provide timely feedback, then we are showing our concern, our support for the students, because we don't want them with the anxiety, extra anxiety or stress of not knowing whether they're passing the course, they're understanding the content or not. Okay. So summative, this one is graded and this one is connected to the major course outcomes, major course objectives. Now, this is an old file again from 2013, 2014. Look, I encircled some parts because that was it then. So 5, 3, and then there's that. Okay, and all those, take note of these things because, okay, and that one as well. Now, in the in the upcoming semester, it's not individual work anymore. Okay, it's not pair work anymore, it's individual work. And because of that, from 5 it's down to 3 to 4. So most likely students will just choose 4. And instead of considering non-print as a genre, considering that there might be access problems, I will not include that as one of the things that they could use. And then, okay, that's practically the same. But what's different now is there's no more pre-program assessment. There's no more pre-teaching assessment. And the part earlier, which is social skills development, it's not there anymore. So I figured, what can I discard without sacrificing the course outcomes and the objectives for this particular requirement? And I figured that I am not going to shortchange the students if I get rid of all those. So I got rid of all those, which were present in the 2013, 2014 requirement. So again, if this is something that we're asking the students to provide sometime in the middle of the SEM, it would really be good if we provide them timely feedback. So those are the things that I had to write in connection to the assessment of learning. So you're saying, Porsche, but we don't have those files readily available. Again, I would say, ginawa nyo na po yan dati, pinagawa sa mga estudyante, sinabi sa kanila yung mga detalye, isusulat lang po natin. Okay? So, bullets lang po muna talaga nagsisimula yan. Yung, ako nga po, mga handwritten notes good old-fashioned printed notebook. Okay? Doon lang po talaga nagsimula yon. Kaya lang tumatanda ako, kaya the document nagre-record ako as much as I can. So my note to self here, which might not be the same as your note to self, is again, start from experience, not from scratch. If you're teaching for the first time in September, start by asking experienced faculty instead from, being so clueless about things. Okay. We will not, just one question. Is there a question that, yeah, we're going over time. Is there a question that
Okay,
is
one question.
burning, Marty?
For ano ma'am, ito ma'am is interesting about study guides. Do we have to upload them all at once or is it best to control what content is made available to which students and under what conditions kaya if ever we're gonna have it staggered?
Okay. If we go by the memo of the OVPAA, of VPAA Bautista, the expectation is for us to make the course pack available by September 1, the whole course pack for each course. But like what I said in the first round of the webinar when I was asked in the Q&A, after the actual presentation, if I were the one to make a decision for faculty who teach more than 2 courses, maybe we can make an appeal to the administration to allow us to give maybe just a half sem's worth of course pack by September 1. Like if I teach 4 different classes, it's more sensible to have by September 1 prepared half SEM's course pack for each of the 4 courses rather than have 2 full course packs for 2 courses and have 2 courses left behind. So at least if I have half a SEM's course pack worth no, for each of the 4 courses, come September 10, I will have all my 4 courses running while I try to finish, maybe within a month's time, the second half of the course pack for the second half of the SEM. And I would still be able to, to finish that before the real second half of the SEM starts. Ayaw po natin may mapag-iwanan, so sana wala tayong mga kurso na papag-iiwanan. Meron lang po kasing danger, merong risk na para matapos natin yung isang kurso na course pack, hindi na natin magawa yung sa ibang kurso. Marami po sa atin, 4 ang kurso, yung iba 3. So, pwede po tayong mag-appeal ulit. Okay? Kung nakikinig po ang mga kapwa namin guro na nagkataon sa panahon ngayon, may hawak ng responsibilidad sa administrasyon, baka naman po pwedeng ganon. Para po sa mga ating mga kasamahan na merong 3 o 4 o higit pang mga kurso sa darating na semestre. Kung paanong nag-aapila din po sa mga academic rules for students, baka po pwedeng i-relax yung rules sa kanilang regular load from the usual 15 or 18, baka pwede pong 12 or 9 na hindi po sila mapipinalize as underload. Baka rin po pwede, gaya dati, na pag nag-drop sila ay hindi po lalabas sa kanilang transcript, kagaya po nung naudlot na second SEM. So yun po yung mga bagay na pwede natin siguro pong iparating sa mga kinauukulan na kaugnay hindi lang po ng ating pinagdaraanan ngayon bilang mga guro, pero kaugnay na rin po ng ating ng maaring pinagdadaanan at pagdadaanan ng ating mga mag-aaral. Okay? Naniniwala po ako ng ating mga kasamahan sa administrasyon ay makatao rin. Minsan po kailangan lang po natin iparating sa kanila. Ayan po, ayan, nakalima na tayo at ang panghuli po ay ang course guide. Kagaya po ng nabanggit ko kanina at napakita ko ng mga description ng bawat bahagi, ayan po ang laman ng course guide. As you may have noticed, some are already in our old syllabus, even when it was not yet obidized, but some of these things like the house rules and the course requirements, their details, we already said them face to face. We just have to write them down. Hindi naman po natin yan hindi po siya, again, it's not starting from scratch. Okay po? And where the course guide is concerned, I'm adding the something blue, which stands for love, purity, and fidelity. But I say that these are qualities not only for solid marriage, but also for a solid course guide and, if I may add, a solid course pack. You all have copies of my course guide, at least that version when it was sent to you. Ayan po, parang ganyan po magiging itsura niya. Ayan po yung mga iba na sinabi ko sa inyo kanina. Ito po, hindi siya kasama explicitly dun sa sinabi sa Course Redesign 101 tsaka sa template, pero tingin ko po hindi naman po makakasama sa estudyante na meron akong short summary kung paano ang takbo, anong klaseng mga activities for assessment and learning ang meron sila. Yan po yung course materials. Ayan, sinasabi lang po dyan. Study schedule. Ayan na po yung buong horizontal syllabus. Diyan po siya lalabas. Okay. Ayan po yung requirements. Ayan. So ito po, sinundan ko lang po yung transcript guide ng UP Diliman. Doon ko po galing yung grading system na yan. Ayan po yung mga house rules. Ito po, basic plagiarism rules. Kasi kahit na po may pandemya, hindi naman po ito, parang ayoko po magkaroon ng ideya ang aking mga estudyante na dahil may pandemya, ay pwede na po silang maging academically dishonest, mag-plagiarize at lahat. So salamat po kay Professor Rosela Moya, Bambi Torrecampo ng DEC-LCAL sa pagpapahiram po niya nitong kanyang basic plagiarism rules sa akin. Yan. Ayan po. Ay, kailangan ko na po itong i-update. Tapos na po ang It's Okay Not to Be Okay. Ano ba po, sasabihin mo pa yan? Gusto ko po ipakita na tao rin ako. Meron po akong guilty pleasure para po hindi ako masiraan ng bait. Yan po. And besides, I actually, watched that because it's connected to children's literature. Ayan po. Ayan. So, sinabi ko po dyan yung mga yan. Tsaka, on a high note, I told them, Adja, fighting. Adya. So what's my note to self? Is it this? Is it the same as yours? Think about your note to self for step 6 for a bit before I show you my note to self. Okay, my note to self is build on, not build new. So the course guide is not really new, all caps, but we're just building on the syllabus that we had before, and building on it, meaning, we just expand it a bit, we just add, write down the things that we used to say face to face in class. So it's not really building new, it's building on. Ayan po. So if you recall, I started by telling you first off the steps that I went through for course redesign, which led me to the making of my course pack. And for course pack, the qualities for a solid marriage, I believe, would be able to apply to a course pack as well. I left this blank in your PDF version because I want you to think about it first. Parang Portia, how on earth would that apply to a course pack? Love, purity, and fidelity? Well, this is just my personal take on it po. Love. Okay? Sabihin na pong corny, cheesy, and all. I mean, it's my own way. I hope I made the solid course pack because it's my own small, concrete way of showing love for the country. I mean, our country is in such a sad state right now, and no thanks to some of our government officials. We are government employees. We are UP employees, which is financed by the taxes of our people. And I think it's a small thing to do our share and to show that they're not wasting our taxes on their taxes on us, and that not all UP people are corrupt, not all UP people are not doing anything but complain and all that. So this is our chance, to show that love. And why can't we love UP? I mean, I personally feel that I would like to thank UP because I still have a job. So many millions lost jobs. My own sister lost her job. Okay. And we are in the academy, we are faculty members because we have a love for knowledge, for learning. We are in our respective disciplines because we believe our disciplines are important and they're worth loving. And we are still, sticking it out with UP as instructors, as faculty members, because somehow we have love for our students. We have love even just for the thought, for the hope that one or two of these students will make a difference in our country in a way that we have failed to do in our own time. And I only have, good intentions for doing this. Um, in that intention, I wanted to be shown in a clear enough course content and direction in the course, and as much as possible, there's congruence to course outcomes and to the weekly learning outcomes, while making, my best effort, giving my best effort to still be consistent with the values of honor and excellence, but because of the situation, with the added values of empathy and compassion to our students. So that's my personal experience in the course pack and why I did it the way that I did it. And for good measure, as expense in her shoe, what helped me do it? As I told you before, insights from the course redesign 101 experience and my overall UP teaching learning experience. But my secret weapon is Lily, my secretary, who's also patiently working from home with me. Okay. If you have more questions or need further clarification, please email Lily. And because she's very able and competent, she will reply to you right away with her own signature meow. And so I hoped at the beginning that you would be able to achieve these outcomes and reach these objectives. And I hope you would be successful in that, or you were successful in that. Because that's all for today. That is my wedding. Oh, I'm sorry. And that's my course, Ganern experience. I hope you would be able to say, Ganern lang pala eh. Yung course Ganern lang pala yon. Carry! Opo. Keep calm and carry on. Kasi kaya nyo yan. Ako po si Portia, hindi kotse, kundi guro sa College of Education, UP Diliman.
Ayan.
Magandang
Maraming
umaga po.
maraming salamat. Maraming salamat po, ma'am, sa inyong presentation. Do we still have time po, ma'am, for some few questions that
Sige
are
po,
left?
all those who are willing to stay on, I am willing to stay on. Maaga pa
Ah,
naman po dito sa corner ko ng mundo. Alas
ayan.
10,
Ayun,
11 pa
napakaaga
lang
naman.
ng gabi. Mas
Ay,
late yung naunang run.
I see, I see. Sige, ma'am. Meron lang po tayong quick question pa from YouTube, no? One of our YouTube viewers, si Prof. Obico. Gusto niya lang po itanong, ma'am, how you computed for the number of working hours per week for a student in a 3-unit course?
Kagaya po ng nabanggit ko nina, pinagbatayan ko po yung nakasulat dun sa memo at yung sinabi sa webinar na academic credit transfer system. Ayun po, meron pong nakalagay na computation doon kung ilang hours po for the whole semester ang per unit. So, kinompute ko lang po siya at tama naman daw po yung computation ko. Ganon din po yung na-compute ng iba nating kasamahan. Halimbawa po sa CHE, kausap ko po sa email yung taga CHE, ganon din po ang pinapasunod sa kanila para sa kanilang course pack. So 8 hours a week, yun po yung lower limit. Doon ko po nang galing, hindi po galing sa akin yon, galing po yun sa na-approve na UP Academic Transfer System. Nakalagay doon yung computation of study load or workload in terms of hours for a whole SEM, and then I just divided it by 14. Ganun ko siya ginawa. Yung time naman, allotted time for the week and for the different activities, yung proxy po ang ginamit ko, proxy approach. But instead of multiplying it by 3, like in basic ed, and in some, recommendations of some references, because these are graduate students and mostly they are, teachers, they're not, fresh graduates na wala pang experience. So I figured, multiplying how long it took me by 2 would be fine. But I'm ready to, I'm open to adjustments, of course. That's what the formative weekly reflection log is about.
All right. Okay. So definitely there should be adjustments and flexibility coming from both parties. Thank you for that, Ma'am Portia. How about this one po? In terms of, I know po ma'am na meron po tayong separate na webinar, but maybe you can just enlighten some of the copyright questions, no, with regards to using materials. In terms of using copyrighted material daw po, gusto malaman ni Prof. Yang kung paano po ma-maximize ang fair use of copyrighted material in the context of the university.
Actually, hindi ko nga po alam yung sagot diyan, eh. Kagaya nga po 'no, nakakahiyangan pong aminin 'no, it's embarrassing that I don't know the law in the Philippines, and I don't know the law here in Canada, where I don't know the law in the US, no, in North America, where fair use is concerned. So what I simply did for now, at least last month when I was preparing the course pack, was to limit the number of pages and to make sure that the pages I lifted as they were would not reach 10%. I mean, and in fact, I think they don't even reach 5%.
Yes,
So
yes.
as far as maximizing that is concerned, I really invite you to attend with me the webinar at 2 o'clock, because even I am going to stay up, until the wee hours of the morning for me in my time zone for that webinar. Kasi po, iba yung ina-access natin yung journal article for us. Pero yung ina-access po natin, tapos ipapamigay, i-distribute, i-share sa iba, like our students. Ayun po, medyo kinakabahan po ako doon, kaya hindi ko po ginawa yon, except for the one of Dr. Aquino, which she herself wrote, and for which she did not sign anything, waiving her right. No, she did not sign a contract with the local journal for that. So, yan po ang mga tanong ko rin, kaya pasensya na po, hindi ko po masagot. I just wanted to play it safe from not 10%, not even
Okay.
10% of the whole
Yes,
book. Ito
that's
po
true.
ang ginawa ko lang rule of thumb para sa akin po. Pero
That
attend po tayo mamayang 2:00.
we can find. Okay, thank you, ma'am. How about this one, ma'am? From another YouTube question po ito kay Prof. Imperial. A graduate course, ano daw po ang marirecommend natin for a graduate course na adult learners sila? Ano kaya yung pwede pong i-highlight versus sa undergraduate courses?
The advantage of quote unquote na the advantage of graduate students, I hope, okay, I'm assuming that they have actual work experience and that they are in graduate school in connection to their professional lives. And as the literature says po, and as, I mean, the academic literature, not my love children's literature, uh, what the academic, the research literature says about that is for adult learners, the recommendation is for more hands-on application type activities that acknowledges their prior knowledge and prior experience, and also acknowledges the need for their lessons in graduate school to be applicable to real life, to their real lives as professionals. Kaya po yung quiz po, hindi ko po, I didn't find it applicable in my case, because the point is they should be reading the books and they should be able to evaluate the books vis-a-vis their particular learners and the lessons they want to teach their learners or their students. So my course po revolved around that, keeping in mind the recommendation from the research literature to acknowledge the special circumstances of professional students who are in grad school, practicing, professionals. Wala pong medyo ganong advantage ang undergrads kasi they're not out yet in the real world. But undergrads have the advantage of youth. And for those who have the means, they have the advantage of technology and technological savvy, which is not usually associated with, manangs like me.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. How many questions can you take pa po, ma'am, before we
Well,
conclude?
my next appointment is at 2.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Hindi po. I
Sige.
mean, all those, this is already bad for self-care. So all our colleagues who have to go, by all means po go. I hope there was something that you picked up from this other than, my fictitious wedding. Uh, um, those who are willing to stay, I am willing to stay on for those who are willing, and for those who have questions or, concerns, and I'll try to answer in the best way I can based on my personal experience and prior knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Sige na, ito pa po may pahabol na question since palaban po tayo sa ating sa ating sessions and gising na gising pa po si Portia. Ito po is from Prof. Mishano. One of my requirements is a research paper for which students have to gather their own sources. I think this is about getting for I think for citation and paper research po siguro ito. So do you
Oh,
have any suggestions on how I can adjust this requirement daw po for students who have little or no connectivity?
ah, pag wala pong connectivity, medyo major major concern po yan, because we cannot risk having the students go to libraries assuming they're even open, no. That's a risk to their health. Kung ako lang po, mama, kung ako po or ma'am or sir nasa sitwasyon na 'yan, mapipilitan po talaga ako na maghanap po ng mga
Okay.
references for them. Tapos, papa-print ko po sa kolehiyo at makikiusap sa kanila na ipadala ang lahat ng 'yon dun sa mga students concerned. Okay, I'm assuming po that this is the case for students who have problems with internet connection. So kung meron naman po silang laptop or nabigyan na po ng laptop thanks to Kaagapay, so tulong po tayo dun sa Kaagapay project, um, then pwedeng USB.
Yes.
In fact, yung course pack po para sa ibang students, i-save po yan sa flash drive. Nandun po yun sa announcement sa webinar, no, ng OVPAA, if not in the memo as well. No, ayun po. So for some students, the course pack will be in flash drive. For some, it will be printed. So depende po from one student to another. Pero in that particular requirement, what I would do is, if my students know early on what they'd like to research on and they don't have internet access, I would have to find the resources for them with whatever access I have, and then ask my college or ask my department to print them or to save them in flash drive and send to students in the soonest possible time. So I could just imagine po there would be some logistical challenges on the part of the units, but we all try to do our share po at this time. Medyo sana po hindi na maging ano no, ma-downgrade na yung quarantine sa Diliman, I mean sa Metro Manila, kasi kailangan by September 1 hindi na po lockdown, kasi paano po ihahanda ang mga course pack, yung mga pagpiprint, pagse-save sa flash drive, pag-aayos per student, per class, yung mga gano'n, malaking trabaho po yun. So ganun lang po naiisip ko, na kung ako po yun, hindi ko po sinasabing ganun yung gagawin nyo, kung ako po yun, kung merong laptop yung estudyante, then flash drive. Okay, ako na po yung magre-research kasi nga po ang problema may laptop siya pero wala po siyang internet access. So ako po yung maghahanap. Ako po yung maghahanap. Medyo maganda rin po yun kasi makakapili na kayo. Mapi-pre-select po, ma-curate nyo, mapi-pre-select nyo po yung babasahin ng estudyante. Tapos, kung naman po itong estudyante may problema parehas sa laptop or computer, tsaka internet access, ipapaprint ko po yun sa unit din. Sa unit din po.
Okay.
Ang
I
ganun
think
po
it's
yung
very
nakikita ko sa ngayon, na I mean, thinking aloud po, that's what I think I would do if I were in that situation. And then, kagaya po na nabanggit ko kanina, kasi anticipated po na yung mga may requirements po ako na talagang nakadepend on children's books. Mula po nung June, mula po nung mabasa ko yung memo ng OVPAA, nabasa ko po by last week of June, uh, naghanap na po ako ng mga sale ng mga children's book publishers sa Pilipinas, at pakonti-konti bumibili po ako ng mga several copies po, no? Na ipapasok sa course pack ng mga estudyante. Kasi po anticipated ko 'yon. Medyo ang mahirap po diyan kung kanya-kanyang pili ng topic ang mga estudyante at kung pipili sila mid-sem lang or halfway, medyo magiging baka po mag-hold din kayo noon. Imagine researching, for resources for this number of students on different topics. Kung anticipated naman po, and if the topics are pre-selected, now
mhm.
ma'am, early on, kaya niyo na pong kaya niyo na pong mag pre-select ng readings for them to help them in that particular requirement.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. How about this one po, ma'am? Also a tricky one, and I'm sure na marami rin pong meron ganitong sentiments. Ako rin po, ma'am, kasi speech classes po ang handle ko. Okay, from Prof. Austria, how do you suggest we deliver course content that requires skills training for our students in dentistry? So this entails requiring them to have certain equipment and material. So medyo may psychomotor skills involved
Is
po,
a
ma'am.
motor component. Okay, the same concern that our colleagues in the CHK raised,
Yes.
and even the ones teaching foreign language classes, that require sana ideally face to face, no,
Mhm.
communication. Ma'am, in one of the webinars of the OVPAA, it was announced that UP will subscribe to this virtual laboratory kind of thing. So, kasi nga po yung mga labs at saka hands-on, may psychomotor, ay yan po ay talagang kailangang tugunan ng administrasyon.
True.
So, personally, ma'am, I don't have any actual suggestion other than that when we were asked to try to do program redesign and decide which courses we will offer remotely, fully remotely, because they can lend themselves to a fully remote delivery, and which courses can be postponed for a later SEM, for the second SEM, hoping against hope that we could do at least blended, some face to face, some remote. yun po yung isa sa mga pinagawa sa atin nung nakaraang buwan. Maliban po dun sa announcement na may pinagpipilian pong mga virtual lab kind of programs ang administrasyon. So siguro po ma'am, yan, dentistry, speech path, yung mga, marami pong mga program siguro sa UP Manila. Sa Diliman naman, yung mga language learning courses, lalo na sa EL, no? European Language at Speech and Theater Arts, mga
Yeah.
ganon. Pati sa CHK, siguro po ang mas maganda pong ninyong tanungin ay yung pong mga kinauukulan, ma'am, sa unit nyo. Kasi po parang wala po ako sa posisyon. Wala po akong paghuhugutang personal na karanasan na maaari ko pong sabihin sa inyo. Wala rin po ako mabibigay na ready analogy like like a wedding analogy na ginawa ko po para doon sa course pack preparation. Ma'am, sorry po. Panawagan na rin po ito sa ating mga kasamahan na nasa mga posisyon ng pamumuno sa administrasyon ng ating mga kolehiyo, departamento. Um, Tulungan po natin, dagdag na tulong po as suporta sa ating mga kapwa faculty, no po? Kasi kayo po ang mas makakatulong sa kanila, mas kagyat na makakatulong at may mga tanong po sila na hindi po talaga ako ang makakasagot. So sana po may mga nanonood sa pamunuan ng ating mga kolehiyo, departamento, pati na po sa pamunuan ng ating mga CEOs at ng ating UP system.
Pagtawad.
Hello, VPAA Cynthia Bautista.
Oo nga
Hindi
po.
kasi po nasa level po
Yeah,
niya. So,
that's
pero
good.
salamat po OVPAA, sa office ng OVPAA, salamat po sa System Committee on Remote Learning. Sila po ang nag-put together nung dahil po sa kanila kaya nagkaroon ng course Redesign 101.
Mm.
Okay? Parang, Porsche, binabayaran ka ba? Sobrang plugging mo na yan, hard sell na. Tinatanong niyo po ako kung paano ko ginawa. Yun po talaga malaking tulong. Hindi po ako binayaran.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you
Hindi
for
po
this
yan,
labor of love,
hindi po yan
Mama.
hindi po siya paid ad. Hindi naman daw po ako artistang gaya ni Sarah Geronimo. Di ba?
Okay. Ma'am, maybe we can have one last po for, kasi since
Opo.
10:28 na rin po. From Prof. Herbosa, I usually send study guides to students on a staggered basis. Kasi napansin po ni ma'am na most students cram and do their answers at the very end. So, pwede rin daw po ba tayong mag-ask for staggered submissions for our students?
Yung on the part of your deadlines, ma'am, for students. Ma'am, in my case, I have completely abandoned my old pre-pandemic house rule that I will deduct certain number of points, raw score, I mean from the raw score, raw points, for each day that requirement is submitted late. So for the first time po, that's gone. And I will accept all rate requirements until the last day of classes without any deduction.
Kaya lang
You
po
don't
ma'am, ang context po kasi ni Prof. Herbosa daw po, yung submission of answers daw po is embedded near the end of the semester. So I think that's the challenge. So maybe there's an overlap of sorts na may mga hindi pa po nagpapasa, but the answers, the answer key is getting released na early. I think that was the challenge po of Prof.
Kaya ano po, ibabalik ko lang po siguro dun sa kung bakit hindi po ako
Ng late
magpapa-quiz
na,
at
yes.
kung bakit po kung may quiz-like man, I would have opted for a self-test na readily available yung sagot pero teaching moment din siya kapag mali ang sagot
Mm.
ng estudyante para po mawala yung issue ng academic dishonesty at saka yung mga ganyan na para po hindi checkable o
Yes.
kaya googleable yung mga sagot. I mean, hindi nila ma-search sa internet,
Yes. Yes.
free access, or hindi nila malalaman mula sa chika ng kaklase. Hindi ko po
Yeah.
alam kung nasa dictionary na yung googleable at saka checkable, no? So, urban dictionary na mga
Yeah.
Pinoy. Pero inisip ko rin po yan, ma'am. Pero ay dahil po dyan at dahil naman po sa klase ng learning outcomes
Yeah.
ko na design across the weeks, eh, ganun po yung klase ng formative assessment, ganun yung klase ng learning activities po na pinili ko.
Yes.
So, mas kayo po siguro nakakaalam, no, ng inyong sariling, ng dynamics ng kurso nyo, ng mga, mas kilala nyo po ang mga estudyante nyo kesa sa akin.
Mhm.
Pero ayun po ma'am, para wala na pong issue sa intellectual honesty,
Yes.
ganun ko na lang po siyang, ganun ko po siyang ginawa. At the same time, na-achieve ang learning outcomes for the week. Tapos nai-inform po ako kung saang aspeto ng topic or ng lesson nahirapan ng estudyante at
True.
kung paano ako pwedeng mag-adjust pa on,
Yes.
on a weekly basis. Ganun po.
Okay. Sige, maraming salamat po. Marami pa po tayong mga tanong na hindi pa po nasasagot dito. Pero if ever naman po, you can always send an email to Lily the Cat. Okay? Kaya ang ating secretary ni Ma'am Portia. So if ever you would have other questions po, ma'am, your email is open?
Nandyan po yung email
Oo.
address ko dun sa ano, pati nga po yung bagong bukas kong Facebook account. Nandun po sa
Wow!
course guide na naipadala na sa inyo kahapon po.
Okay.
Gusto ko lang po sabihin, ewan ko kung nabanggit ko kanina, editable po, naka-Word version po yung mga
Wow!
lahat ng guides na pinadala ko. Just, make the
Plug and play,
necessary
yes.
attribution when and where necessary, and editable po para mas madali para sa inyo. Kung meron pong useful doon or readily adaptable, kayo na po ang bahala. At saka kung naman pong nabanggit po kasi ni Sir Ton Clemente ng Oath, Diliman, na baka magkaroon ng ibang venue na parang panel discussion type para nga sa mga concerns pa and questions sa mga faculty. So wala nang input, parang eto na ngayon, nagka-sharing of experience. So more like a panel discussion na puro Q&A kind of thing po. So kung matuloy man po 'yon, sigurado naman pong i-open po 'yon sa lahat
Mm.
ng CUs. Hindi
Yes.
lang po 'yon sa Diliman.
Okay, sige, maraming maraming salamat po ulit kay Prof. Portia, and for, of course, for all of our guests from different CUs, different universities. Maraming salamat po sa pag-attend.
Sige
I'm
po.
sure, I hope na we everybody picked up a skill or two, and we will be here to assist you, to support you in your course pack Ganern experience. Okay,
Opo,
maraming
tandaan
salamat.
niyo po, ang course pack, Ganern lang yan. Carry.
Ganern
Carry
lang.
po yan. Carry po. Carry. So,
Yeah.
carry on po. Salamat po. Kita-kita po tayo mamayang alas 2. Alas 2 po ng
Yes.
hapon dyan sa inyo. Alas 2 ng umaga dito sa akin. Para po masagot ang mga tanong natin dyan sa IPR.
Late night show po yun mamaya ni Prof. Portia. Okay, sige, maraming salamat po. At please, ingat po kayo. Maraming salamat.
Have a good lunch po or brunch. Bye-bye po.
Okay. Salamat po, Ma'am Portia. Tayo po'y nakatawid. Ayan.
Wala na sila.
Ayun po, sa participants, mabilis na po siyang bumababa.
Parang may 203 ba? Tama pa ba itong sa
Ayun
akin?
po, nag-190 na po siya.
Okay.
Ayan. Medyo ano po tayo, mas blockbuster po tayo nung huli kasi first.
Tsaka yung merong nanood na lang dun sa recording sa
True.
YouTube.
Yeah, that's true. Opo.
Oo,
Tsaka pero
sabi nga
nag-live
ni
din po tayo. Opo, sa
oo,
YouTube.
pero sabi nga ni Ton, hala, rough pa yun, hindi ko pa yun na-edit.
Hindi, okay lang po yun. Kasi ano naman po, the whole session is there. Ayun.
Okay. Baka ikaw, naka-on ka pa, pwede raw bang mag-connect?
Ay,
Nandun yung email ko, nandun sa course guide.
yes,
Nandun yung
in the course
address
guide
ko.
po. Okay.
Oo.
In the link
Tapos,
po.
meron na po akong nakausap ng real time na kasamahan sa DFPP, sa Filipino, Department ng Diliman.
Yes,
Kasi
opo.
yung mga concerns po niya, parang ang hirap kung sa email. So, nag-set na lang po kami, nagka-real-time conversation po kami via Messenger, video chat. Ayun po.
Okay. All right, sige. For ano po pala yung mga participants na gusto po ng certificate, please answer the evaluation form here. I'll be resending it in the chat box. Okay, thank
And
you.
Marty,
Yes po,
yung
ma'am.
nagpadala daw si Ma'am Lo,
Yes po.
Professor Grepo sa kanila nung link kahapon sa pre-registered participants. Nandun yung PDF version with a few missing information para nga they think about it first,
Yeah.
diba?
Okay, so nasa link po
Yun,
lahat.
the note to self. But there's a folder of all the guides. It's the whole course pack minus the learning
Yeah, I've
resources.
seen it nga po, ma'am. Ang
Opo.
challenge
So
lang
they
po
could,
namin
yeah, they could just access that. Opo.
mm. Ang challenge ka namin ma'am ano, per week po kasi yung yung bawat module. So medyo I just finished with my course pack din po. I used yours as reference ma'am by the way. Malaking tulong and kaya lang problema, hindi ko
Pagsulat
po
mo ako.
ay
Kasi
sige, I will
hindi ko
type
po
it.
kaya talaga. Hindi na talaga kaya ng module. Sabi naman dun sa course,
Opo, yun yung
eating
challenge
your
na.
own resource is the last resort. Mhm.
Yes, that's true. Kaya ngayon may patapos pa rin din po kami. Pero it's kind of fun actually, ma'am, when you get the hang of it. Yung pag-match ng objective with the assessments and the challenge of making it offline plus online. I think it's really interesting also for us junior faculty sa department at least.
Basta our junior faculty, if you need help, please don't hesitate. Please tell our more senior
Yes.
colleagues, even if they're also busy. I'm sure somebody out there will make time to help you out. Maybe not all of them, but I'm sure there will be at least one who would take time out to answer your questions and to help you out.
Definitely. Okay. I
Yeah.
think
A
wala na
cool,
po.
calming voice daw. Oh my gosh. And I have the voice of a cat.
Ay, wow. Naku, hindi naman po. Ano lang, bagong gising voice po eh.
Your
Okay,
voice
if,
of a
yeah,
cat. And my
okay.
voice is the voice of walang tulog. Ganun ba?
Ay, iba. Hindi naman po. Baka maging calming din po yan mamaya. Sige, I think okay na po, ma'am. We can end the meeting now since it's being recorded. But thank you again, participants. Baka po hindi lang sila nakakapag-log out pa.
So appeal na lang po, last appeal, let's just do what we can as faculty members and our faculty administrators po. Maybe again, there are some rethinking, maybe a reconsideration, particularly for our colleagues who are handling 3 or 4, maybe even 5 courses. So let's seriously think about a half a SEM's worth of course pack for
Mm,
all the 3 or 4 courses of those faculty members
yes.
ready by September 1, and then give them maybe an extra month until
Yes.
October 1 to finish the rest.
Mhm.
No student left behind, no
True.
course left behind. If the
Yes.
course is left behind, students in that course will be left behind. Wala po tayong iwanan sa
Okay.
Diliman man o saan pa mang campus ng pamantasan.
Okay, sige. Yeah, I think, sige, if there are no more concerns from the audience, I think we can now close the meeting. But don't worry kasi it's uploaded on YouTube and the materials have been sent. So okay naman po lahat. Okay? Sige, maraming salamat po ulit, Prof. Portia. We really appreciate this. And we're now going to end the meeting. Salamat po.
Okay po. See you po at 2 o'clock, the webinar on IPR.
Yes, sige po.
Ingat po,
Thank you.
ingat po, alagaan po ang sarili, mahalin ang sarili.